Chapter 1. The Hidden Language of Human Behavior. Reading people does not begin with listening to what they say. It begins far earlier, in the quiet moments before words ever form. Every human being walks into a room already communicating. Their posture, their pace, the tension in their shoulders, the way their eyes scan the environment, all of it speaks before the mouth ever opens. Most people miss this language because they are trained to listen only to words. But words are the last layer of communication, not the first. Long before speech evolved, humans survived by reading movement, facial tension, shifts in energy, and subtle changes in behavior. That ancient system is still running in your nervous system today. Human behavior is never random. Every action has a cause, even when the person themselves is unaware of it. A slight lean away during conversation, a delayed response to a simple question, a hand that suddenly tightens. These are not meaningless habits. They are reflections of internal states. Comfort, fear, confidence, attraction, resistance, and deception all leave physical signatures. The body cannot lie as easily as the mouth because the body answers to the nervous system, not to social rules. More than 60% of human communication is nonverbal. That means most of what people tell you is never spoken out loud. It is shown. And once you learn how to see it, conversations change forever. You stop guessing how people feel. You stop relying on words alone. You begin to observe. One of the most important concepts in reading people is the idea of a baseline. A baseline is how a person behaves when they are relaxed, safe, and under no emotional pressure. Everyone has one. Some people naturally gesture a lot. Some blink frequently. Some avoid eye contact even when they are telling the truth. Without knowing a person's baseline, you will misread them. True people, reading does not come from assumptions. It comes from comparison. Once you understand how someone behaves in a neutral state, any deviation becomes meaningful. Faster blinking, shallow breathing, stiff posture, sudden stillness, excessive smiling, or unusual silence all signal that something internally has shifted. This does not automatically mean lying. It means change. And change is where truth hides. Consider posture. When a person feels confident and safe, their body opens. Shoulders relax, chest expands, movements are fluid. When they feel threatened, judged, or uncertain, the body closes. Arms cross, shoulders hunch, movements become tight and protective. These reactions happen faster than conscious thought. The brain detects danger or discomfort, and the body responds instantly. The same is true for facial behavior. A genuine smile is not just lips lifting upward. It involves the eyes. The muscles around the eyes contract, creating small lines, warmth, and softness. This is known as a Duchenne smile, and it cannot be faked easily. A forced smile stays confined to the mouth. The eyes remain unchanged, flat, disconnected. Your brain can sense this difference, even if you've never studied it consciously. Micro-expressions take this even further. These are flashes of emotion that last less than a second. They occur when a person feels something but tries to hide it. A flicker of fear before confidence. A flash of contempt before politeness. A moment of sadness before composure. These expressions are involuntary. They are emotional reflexes. By the time the mind steps in to control behavior, the face has already revealed the truth. Professionals such as FBI profilers, psychologists, and behavioral analysts, they don't listen for lies. They watch for inconsistencies. When words and body language align, Communication feels natural. When they clash, something is wrong. A person claiming confidence while fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, and tightening their jaw is not confident. They are managing anxiety. But this skill is not reserved for experts. Anyone can learn it. The key is awareness. Most people are trapped inside their own thoughts during conversations. They wait for their turn to speak. A people reader watches instead. They notice how someone enters a room. Do they rush or glide? Do they scan faces or avoid them? Do they take up space or make themselves smaller? Even something as simple as a handshake carries information. A firm, relaxed grip often signals confidence and comfort. An overly strong grip may indicate dominance or insecurity masked as strength. A limp handshake may suggest passivity, nervousness, or lack of engagement. None of these signals mean anything alone. But when combined with other behaviors, patterns emerge. Eye contact is another misunderstood cue. Avoiding eye contact does not always mean deception. It can indicate shyness, respect, cultural conditioning, or anxiety. Excessive eye contact, however, can signal dominance, control, or even aggression. The truth lives in balance and context. Real mastery comes from pattern recognition. Just like a chess master does not focus on a single move, but on the entire board, a skilled observer tracks clusters of behavior. Posture, facial tension, voice tone, breathing, gestures, and timing all work together. When several signals point in the same emotional direction, the message becomes clear. Mirroring is one of the strongest indicators of connection. When people feel aligned, they subconsciously match each other's body language. They lean at the same angle. They cross their legs the same way. They adopt similar rhythms of speech. This is rapport in action. When mirroring suddenly stops, when one person leans back while the other leans forward, when rhythms fall out of sync, it often signals disagreement, discomfort, or emotional withdrawal. Reading people also means listening to silence, hesitations, pauses, delayed responses, and changes in speech rhythm often reveal more than words themselves. A pause before answering a simple question is rarely accidental. The brain is either searching for truth or constructing a story. But here is the most important rule of all. Reading people is not about judgment. It is about understanding. The goal is not to label someone as good or bad, honest or dishonest. The goal is awareness. When you understand human behavior, you become calmer, more grounded, and more emotionally intelligent. You stop reacting blindly. You start responding intentionally. This skill sharpens empathy. When you recognize fear behind anger, insecurity behind dominance, or sadness behind silence, you interact differently. You communicate with clarity instead of assumption. You protect yourself without becoming closed. You lead without force. Every person you meet is sending signals. Most of the world is speaking a language no one is listening to. When you learn to read that language, people stop being confusing. Interactions stop feeling random. Social dynamics become predictable, not because people are simple, but because human behavior follows patterns. As you move through this audiobook, remember this. You are not learning tricks. You are training perception. And once perception sharpens, nothing about people ever feels mysterious again. Chapter 2, Decoding the Face Emotions That Cannot Lie. The human face is the most honest storyteller in the body. It can be trained to smile, coached to appear calm, and conditioned to hide emotion, but it can never fully escape the nervous system that controls it. In fractions of a second, before logic intervenes, the face reacts, And in those brief moments, truth appears. Every emotion begins internally before it becomes conscious. The brain registers a stimulus, emotional circuits activate, and facial muscles respond instantly. This happens faster than thought, faster than words, and often faster than intent. That is why the face reveals what the mouth tries to conceal. These rapid, involuntary facial reactions are known as micro-expressions. They last anywhere from 1/25th to 1/5 of a second. Too fast for most people to notice consciously, yet long enough for the trained eye to detect. A person may say they are calm, but a flicker of fear crosses their face. They may express agreement, but a micro-expression of contempt leaks through. These are not accidents. They are emotional reflexes. Psychologist Paul Ekman identified 7 universal facial expressions shared by all humans regardless of culture, language, or upbringing. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. These emotions are biologically programmed. A child born anywhere in the world will express these emotions in the same facial patterns. This universality is what makes facial reading such a powerful tool. Happiness is not just smiling. A genuine expression of happiness engages the muscles around the eyes. The cheeks lift, the eyes narrow slightly. There is warmth, softness, and symmetry. This is known as a Duchenne smile. A fake smile only moves the lips. The eyes remain unchanged, cold, or detached. Once you learn to see this difference, you will never mistake politeness for joy again. Sadness has its own signature. The inner corners of the eyebrows rise slightly, creating a subtle arch. The lower lip may tremble or protrude. The eyes lose tension. Sadness often tries to hide behind composure, but the eyebrows betray it. Even when someone says they are fine, sadness often appears for a split second before the mask returns. Anger lowers the eyebrows, tightens the jaw, and flares the nostrils. The eyes harden. Anger is one of the hardest emotions to fully suppress because it prepares the body for confrontation. Even when masked by smiles or calm speech, anger often leaks through tension in the face and jaw. Fear widens the eyes and stretches the mouth horizontally. It prepares the body to detect danger and escape. Fear often flashes when someone is caught off guard, questioned unexpectedly, or confronted with information they were not prepared to handle. Surprise raises the eyebrows and opens the mouth. True surprise is immediate and short-lived. If surprise appears late or lasts too long, it may be manufactured. Timing matters. Real emotions happen instantly. Fake emotions arrive after thought. Disgust wrinkles the nose and lifts the upper lip. It signals rejection, moral or physical. Disgust often appears when someone hears something they strongly disagree with but tries to remain polite. Contempt is unique. It appears as a one-sided lip raise, a slight smirk on one side of the face. Contempt signals superiority, disrespect, or hidden resentment. It is one of the most dangerous emotions in relationships because it often operates silently. To read faces accurately, you must stop watching expressions as a whole and start noticing muscle movement. Pay attention to eyebrows, eye tension, jaw clenching, lip compression, and asymmetry. Genuine emotions tend to be symmetrical. Fake ones are uneven, delayed, or incomplete. The eyes deserve special attention. They are directly connected to the autonomic nervous system. When people experience emotional arousal, whether fear, attraction, or stress, their pupils dilate. When they feel threatened or hostile, the gaze becomes narrow and fixed. Rapid blinking often signals anxiety or cognitive overload. A sudden pause in blinking may signal intense focus or aggression. Another critical facial signal is timing. When emotion appears before words, it is usually real. When it appears after words, it is often rehearsed. If someone hears bad news and shows sadness instantly, that emotion is genuine. If sadness appears only after they realize how they should react, it is likely performed. Face touching is another important clue. Touching the nose, mouth, cheeks, ears, or chin often serves as a self-soothing behavior. These gestures activate calming nerve pathways. People touch their face more when they feel stressed, uncertain, or internally conflicted. This does not automatically mean lying. It means emotional discomfort. Jaw tension is especially revealing. A clenched jaw often indicates suppressed anger or restraint. Lip pressing can signal withheld thoughts or disagreement. A sudden tightening of facial muscles during conversation suggests emotional regulation is taking place. The eyebrow flash is a subtle but powerful cue. When people see someone they like, trust, or feel comfortable with, they often raise their eyebrows briefly as a nonverbal greeting. Absence of this flash can indicate discomfort or lack of rapport. Reading faces is not about memorizing expressions like a chart. It is about congruence. Do the facial expressions match the words, tone, and context? When everything aligns, communication feels smooth. When it doesn't, your intuition feels uneasy. That unease is information. As you practice this skill, you will begin to notice emotions before people verbalize them. You will sense resistance before it becomes objection. You will detect attraction before it becomes obvious. You will recognize discomfort even when someone insists they are fine. This ability does not make you manipulative. It makes you aware. It allows you to respond with intelligence instead of assumption. It sharpens empathy. It deepens connection. The face is a map of the emotional brain. Every twitch, tightening, and relaxation marks a shift in internal state. Once you learn to read it, you stop guessing what people feel. You see it. And when you can see emotions clearly, you are never blind in human interaction again. Chapter 3. Body Language, the silent messenger of the mind. Long before a person speaks, their body has already revealed their internal state. The body does not wait for permission from the mind. It reacts automatically, shaped by instinct, emotion, and survival. Every movement, every shift in posture, every adjustment of space is information. Most people overlook these signals because they are subtle and constant, but to the trained observer, they form a continuous narrative of what a person is truly experiencing. Body language is not decoration. It is communication rooted in evolution. For thousands of years, humans relied on movement and posture to determine safety, intent, and trust. A relaxed body signaled peace. A tense stance warned of danger. These interpretations still exist beneath conscious awareness, influencing how we perceive others and how they perceive us. Posture is one of the strongest indicators of emotional state. When people feel confident and secure, their bodies expand, the spine straightens, the shoulders roll back, and movements become fluid. When they feel uncertain, threatened, or judged, the body contracts. Shoulders round forward, the head tilts downward, and limbs draw closer to the torso. This shrinking behavior is a protective response, an unconscious attempt to reduce visibility and vulnerability. Space is equally revealing. Confident individuals tend to occupy more space. They sit with arms relaxed, legs open, and gestures wide. Those who feel insecure often minimize themselves, crossing arms, folding legs tightly, or holding objects close to the chest. These spatial choices are rarely deliberate. They are expressions of how safe or powerful a person feels in the moment. The direction of the body tells its own story. When someone is engaged and interested, their torso naturally turns toward the person they are interacting with. When they feel uncomfortable or eager to leave, their body angles away. The feet, in particular, are remarkably honest. People consciously control their faces and hands, but they forget about their feet. Feet pointing toward an exit often signal a desire to escape. Feet oriented toward a person indicate attention and engagement. Weight shifting and repetitive movement often signal internal tension. Rocking slightly, tapping feet, or bouncing knees can indicate impatience, anxiety, or excess nervous energy. Stillness, on the other hand, can signal either confidence or suppression. A sudden freeze in a normally expressive person often indicates emotional restraint or fear of revealing something. Hand gestures carry powerful meaning. Open palms facing upward generally communicate openness, honesty, and cooperation. Closed fists, hidden hands, or hands tucked into pockets can signal discomfort or defensiveness. Steepling, where the fingertips touch lightly to form a triangle, often appears in individuals who feel confident, authoritative, or in control of the situation. This gesture is common among leaders, negotiators, and those asserting dominance. Self-soothing behaviors, also known as pacifying behaviors, are among the most important body language cues to recognize. These include rubbing the hands together, touching the neck, adjusting clothing, playing with jewelry, or smoothing fabric. These actions stimulate calming nerves and help the body regulate stress. When pacifying behaviors increase suddenly, it signals emotional discomfort, uncertainty, or internal conflict. Touching the neck or throat is particularly revealing. This area houses vital structures and is highly sensitive. When people feel vulnerable or anxious, they often protect or stimulate this area unconsciously. Rubbing the back of the neck may indicate doubt or confusion. Covering the throat can signal fear or insecurity. Mirroring is one of the clearest indicators of connection and rapport. When people feel aligned, they naturally adopt similar postures, gestures, and rhythms. They may cross their legs the same way, lean at similar angles, or mirror each other's hand movements. This synchronization occurs without conscious effort. When mirroring breaks, when one person suddenly changes posture or leans away, it often indicates emotional disconnect or disagreement. Proxemics, the study of personal space, adds another layer of understanding. In most social contexts, people maintain a comfortable distance of about 18 to 24 inches with strangers. Moving closer than this without invitation can signal intimacy, dominance, or aggression, depending on context. Stepping back often indicates discomfort, withdrawal, or the need for emotional distance. The wrists and forearms also provide insight. Exposed wrists often signal trust and openness. Covered wrists, clenched arms, or rigid positioning may indicate guardedness. Clenched fists often appear when anger is being suppressed or when someone feels powerless but emotionally charged. It is crucial to understand that no single gesture tells the full story. Body language must be read in clusters and in context. Crossed arms may signal defensiveness, but they may also indicate cold or comfort. The difference lies in accompanying signals. Facial tension, foot direction, breathing patterns, and voice tone provide confirmation. baseline behavior remains essential. A normally animated person who becomes stiff is revealing a shift. A normally reserved person who suddenly gestures excessively may be compensating for nervousness. Truth does not hide in behavior itself, but in change. Reading body language is not about control or manipulation. It is about awareness. When you become fluent in this silent language, you begin to feel conversations rather than analyze them. You sense tension before conflict arises. You recognize discomfort before words turn defensive. You respond with clarity instead of reaction. The body never stops communicating. It speaks even when the mouth remains silent. And when you learn to listen to it, human interaction becomes less confusing, less chaotic, and far more honest. Chapter 4. The voice behind the words. Decoding vocal cues, words carry meaning, but the human voice carries intention. Long before we consciously process language, our nervous system reacts to how something is said. Tone, pitch, rhythm, pace, volume, and pauses create an emotional fingerprint that often reveals more than the words themselves. This layer of communication, known as paralanguage, operates beneath awareness, shaping trust, credibility, and emotional truth in every interaction. When people speak truthfully, their voice tends to flow naturally. The rhythm is balanced, breathing is steady, and the tone matches the emotional content of the message. When people experience stress, fear, or internal conflict, the voice changes. These changes are not deliberate. They are physiological responses triggered by the autonomic nervous system. The body prepares for threat, and the voice becomes affected. Tone is the emotional coloring of speech. It reveals attitude, mood, and intent. A warm, relaxed tone often signals openness and comfort. A sharp or clipped tone may signal irritation or defensiveness. A flat tone can indicate emotional withdrawal, boredom, or suppressed feeling. When someone says the right words with the wrong tone, the tone is usually telling the truth. Pitch is one of the clearest stress indicators. Under emotional pressure, the vocal cords tighten, causing pitch to rise. This is why people often sound strained or higher pitched when nervous, lying, or trying to control a situation. A sudden increase in pitch during a sensitive part of a conversation often signals emotional arousal, even if the words remain calm. Lower pitch, when natural and consistent, is generally associated with confidence and stability. However, forced lowering of the voice can sound unnatural and may signal manipulation or performance. The pace of speech offers additional insight. Rapid speech can indicate excitement, anxiety, or an attempt to overwhelm or distract. When someone speaks unusually fast while providing excessive detail, it may indicate nervous energy or an effort to convince rather than communicate. Slowed speech, especially when paired with careful word selection, can indicate caution, suppression, or cognitive load. The brain works harder when fabricating information, and that effort often slows verbal output. Volume reflects emotional intensity. Raised volume can signal anger, defensiveness, enthusiasm, or a need to assert control. A sudden drop in volume may indicate shame, secrecy, or vulnerability. Whispering in an otherwise normal conversation often signals that the speaker perceives the information as risky or sensitive. Consistently loud speakers may be compensating for insecurity, while consistently soft speakers may avoid confrontation or seek safety. Pauses are where hidden truths often surface. Natural pauses allow thoughts to form and emphasize meaning. Delayed pauses after simple questions however, often indicate hesitation or internal editing. When someone repeats a question before answering or fills silence with unnecessary words, they may be buying time to construct a response. Silence itself is not the enemy. In many cases, silence applies pressure that reveals authenticity. Speech disfluencies provide further clues. Fillers such as you know, and like are normal parts of conversation. However, a sudden increase in these fillers during specific topics often signals discomfort or cognitive strain. The brain struggles to maintain smooth speech while managing emotional suppression, fabrication, or fear of exposure. Another subtle indicator is throat clearing, coughing, or voice cracking. Under stress, the body reduces saliva production and tightens muscles around the throat. This dryness and tension often result in involuntary throat clearing. These reactions are not conscious choices. They are physiological signs of internal pressure. Listening to vocal congruence is critical. Do the words, tone, and pacing align with the situation? When someone expresses excitement in a monotone voice or delivers bad news with excessive enthusiasm, the mismatch suggests emotional incongruence. Authentic emotion carries coherence. When coherence breaks, something internal is misaligned. Vocal behavior also reveals power dynamics. Dominant speakers often interrupt, speak longer, and use declarative statements rather than questions. Their tone tends to be steady and controlled. Submissive speakers often soften their statements with qualifiers, such as maybe, I think, or kind of. Excessive apologizing can indicate conflict avoidance rather than genuine remorse. People also alter their voice depending on social context. Notice how someone speaks to authority figures versus subordinates? Shifts in tone, pitch, and politeness reveal perceived status and internal confidence. A person who sounds confident publicly but passive privately may be managing insecurity. Someone who becomes aggressive only in safe environments may rely on control rather than strength. The human brain is poor at multitasking under stress. When someone lies, they must remember the story, suppress the truth, monitor reactions, and regulate emotions simultaneously. This cognitive overload often leaks through the voice. Changes in pitch, pace, hesitation, and rhythm are byproducts of this mental strain. However, vocal cues should never be interpreted in isolation. Illness, fatigue, personality, and cultural norms all influence speech. The key is deviation from baseline. When a person's voice changes noticeably during a specific topic or moment, that change deserves attention. Mastering vocal analysis does not mean interrogating every word. It means listening with presence. It means noticing shifts rather than chasing certainty. When you become attuned to vocal cues, conversations slow down. You hear emotion beneath language. You respond with clarity rather than assumption. The voice is the bridge between thought and expression. It carries fear, confidence, hesitation, and intent. When you learn to hear beyond words, you gain access to a deeper layer of human truth. And once you can hear that layer, people rarely need to tell you how they feel. You already know. Chapter 5. Emotional leeching. When the truth slips through, no matter how carefully a person manages their image, emotion always looks for an exit. The human brain can control words, filter facial expressions, and rehearse behavior, but it cannot fully shut down the nervous system. When emotional pressure builds, it leaks. These leaks are subtle, often overlooked, but they are among the most reliable indicators of inner truth. This phenomenon is known as Emotional leakage. Emotional leakage occurs when the mind attempts to suppress or disguise an internal state that the body is already responding to. The result is a mismatch. The person appears calm, but their behavior tells a different story. Their words sound confident, but their body betrays uncertainty. These leaks are not intentional. They are the byproducts of internal conflict. One of the most common forms of emotional leakage is pacifying behavior. These are self-soothing actions the body uses to regulate stress. Rubbing the hands together, touching the face, smoothing clothing, adjusting jewelry, scratching the head, or repeatedly shifting posture are all attempts to calm the nervous system. These behaviors increase when a person feels anxious, uncertain, or emotionally threatened. Another powerful indicator is timing. When emotional reactions appear before conscious control can intervene, they are often genuine. A flash of fear before composure, a moment of anger before politeness, a flicker of sadness before a smile returns. These micro-reactions reveal what the person is trying to manage internally. Emotional leakage often appears during moments of cognitive load. When someone is answering difficult questions, defending themselves, or explaining inconsistencies, the mental effort required increases. The brain struggles to maintain control over both content and appearance. This strain often produces leaks in behavior, voice, or expression. Hand behavior becomes especially revealing under stress. Hands may tremble slightly, fidget excessively, or retreat out of sight. The hands are closely connected to emotional expression. When they disappear, it often signals discomfort or the desire to hide vulnerability. Clenched fists can signal suppressed anger or frustration. Open palms turning inward may indicate defensiveness. Breathing patterns also change. Calm breathing is slow and deep. Stress causes shallow, rapid breathing, often centered in the chest rather than the abdomen. A sudden inhale before answering, breath holding, or sighing may indicate emotional regulation or internal tension. Emotional leakage is not limited to negative emotions. Attraction, excitement, and anticipation leak as well. Increased eye contact, pupil dilation, leaning in, subtle mirroring, and vocal warmth often appear before conscious acknowledgement. People may deny interest verbally, while their behavior signals engagement. Another key form of leakage is incongruence. When words, tone, facial expression, and body language do not align, something is being managed. A person saying, "I'm comfortable with that," while leaning away, crossing arms, and tightening their jaw is experiencing internal conflict. The discomfort is real, even if the words are polite. Stress also affects motor control. People may become unusually rigid or unusually animated. Some freeze, minimizing movement to avoid detection. Others overcompensate with excessive gestures and explanations. Both are signs of internal pressure. Eye behavior provides additional insight. Under stress, people may blink rapidly, avoid eye contact, or fixate intensely. Sudden changes in eye behavior during specific topics are often meaningful. The eyes respond directly to emotional arousal. Speech patterns may also reveal leakage. Changes in pacing, filler words, repetition, or unnecessary detail often accompany emotional suppression. Over-explaining can be a sign of insecurity or the desire to control perception. It is important to understand that emotional leakage does not automatically indicate deception. It indicates emotional load. A person may be telling the truth, but feeling fear, shame, or vulnerability. Reading people accurately requires separating emotion from intent. Emotional discomfort does not equal dishonesty. To use this skill ethically, you must pair observation with empathy. Emotional leakage provides information, not permission to judge. When you recognize discomfort, you can slow the conversation, offer reassurance, or adjust your approach. Awareness creates choice. As you become more attuned to emotional leakage, you will begin to notice subtle shifts almost immediately. A slight tightening, a pause, a breath, a gesture that doesn't belong. These moments are signals. They are invitations to observe more closely, not to conclude prematurely. The truth rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers through the body, slips through behavior, and escapes through emotion. When you learn to recognize these leaks, you stop chasing certainty and start understanding people as they truly are. Emotional leakage is not weakness. It is humanity. And when you learn to see it clearly, you gain not power over people, but insight into them. Chapter 6. Baselines, Patterns, and the Power of Context. Reading people accurately is not about spotting a single gesture, expression, or vocal shift and drawing conclusions from it. That approach leads to misunderstanding. True insight comes from comparison, pattern recognition, and context. This is where the concept of the baseline becomes essential. A baseline is the foundation of all behavioral analysis. Without it, observation turns into assumption. Every person has a natural way of being, a default rhythm of movement, speech, expression, and interaction that emerges when they feel relaxed, safe, and unthreatened. Some people are naturally animated. They gesture frequently, speak quickly, and change facial expressions often. Others are naturally reserved, speaking slowly, moving little, and maintaining minimal facial expression. Neither is deceptive. It is simply how their nervous system operates when at ease. To establish a baseline, observation must occur in low-stress moments, casual conversation, neutral topics, light interactions. This is when behavior is least filtered. The more time you spend observing someone in these conditions, the clearer their baseline becomes. You begin to recognize how they normally sit, how much eye contact they maintain, how often they blink, how they speak when they are not under pressure. Once the baseline is established, deviations become meaningful. A normally expressive person who suddenly becomes stiff and quiet is signaling internal change. A usually calm speaker who begins to talk rapidly and over-explain is experiencing emotional load. These deviations are not proof of anything on their own. They are indicators that something has shifted internally. Patterns matter more than moments. A single nervous gesture may mean nothing. Repeated gestures appearing around the same topic or person often means something significant. If discomfort consistently arises when finances are mentioned, or when a certain individual enters the room, or when a specific question is asked, a pattern is forming. Patterns reveal emotional hotspots. Context gives those patterns meaning. The same behavior can signal different things depending on the situation. Crossed arms in a cold room signal temperature, not defensiveness. Rapid blinking during a long day may signal fatigue, not anxiety. That is why behavior must always be interpreted within environmental, emotional, and social context. High-stakes situations amplify behavioral signals. Interviews, negotiations, confrontations, or emotionally charged conversations place pressure on the nervous system. Under pressure, people leak more information. Baseline deviations become stronger, faster, and harder to suppress. This is why trained observers pay close attention during moments of stress. Another crucial element is cluster analysis. Behavior rarely speaks in isolation. When multiple signals align, the message becomes clearer. Vocal hesitation combined with facial tension and body withdrawal tells a stronger story than any single cue alone. Clusters reduce guesswork and increase accuracy. Timing is another powerful contextual factor. When does a behavior occur? Immediately after a question. During a specific topic? Only around certain people? Timing helps identify cause. A reaction that appears consistently after one trigger is rarely accidental. Emotional intensity also shapes behavior. Strong emotions produce stronger signals. Mild discomfort may show as subtle shifts. Fear or anger produces visible tension, changes in posture, and vocal alterations. Learning to calibrate intensity helps you gauge how emotionally invested someone is in a situation. Cultural and personality differences must always be respected. Eye contact norms, personal space, and expressive behavior vary widely across cultures. Introverts and extroverts express differently. Reading people is not about forcing one standard onto everyone. It is about understanding deviation within their personal norm. Context also includes your role in the interaction. People behave differently depending on perceived power dynamics. Authority figures, peers, and subordinates each trigger different responses. Awareness of your influence helps you interpret behavior more accurately. As your skill develops, you will notice that understanding people becomes less analytical and more intuitive. Your brain begins to recognize patterns automatically. You sense shifts before you consciously identify them. This intuition is not magic. It is trained perception. Reading people well requires patience. Rushing to conclusions undermines accuracy. Observation must precede interpretation. Curiosity must replace judgment. When you approach human behavior as information rather than evidence, clarity emerges. Baselines ground you. Patterns guide you. Context protects you from error. Together, they transform observation into understanding. When you master this level of awareness, people stop being unpredictable. Not because they are simple, but because human behavior follows emotional logic. And once you understand that logic, you navigate social reality with calm confidence rather than confusion. Chapter 7. Influence, Rapport, and Social Alignment. Influence does not begin with persuasion. It begins with alignment. Before a single idea is accepted, before trust is spoken, the nervous system decides whether someone feels safe, understood, and connected. This decision happens silently, beneath awareness, through subtle signals exchanged between two people. When alignment is present, influence flows naturally. When it is absent, no amount of logic or force will succeed. Rapport is the foundation of all meaningful influence. It is the state in which two nervous systems feel synchronized. In rapport, communication feels easy. Responses come naturally. Tension lowers. People become more open to understanding and cooperation. This state is not created through words alone. It emerges through posture, rhythm, tone, timing, and emotional attunement. One of the strongest indicators of rapport is mirroring. When people feel connected, they subconsciously mirror each other's body language, speech patterns, and emotional tempo. This is not imitation. It is alignment. A slight lean forward is matched. A crossed leg is echoed. Speech rhythm begins to synchronize. This happens automatically when trust forms. When mirroring disappears, it often signals emotional distance or disagreement. Voice alignment plays a crucial role as well. People in rapport tend to match each other's tone, pace, and volume. When one person speaks softly, the other adjusts. When one slows down, the other follows. This vocal synchronization calms the nervous system and builds a sense of understanding without conscious effort. Eye behavior also reflects alignment. Comfortable eye contact, relaxed blinking, and shared gaze indicate engagement. Avoidance, excessive staring, or tension around the eyes often signal misalignment. In aligned interactions, eye contact feels natural rather than forced. Influence becomes ethical and effective when it respects emotional reality. Attempting to persuade someone who feels threatened or misunderstood only increases resistance. The body closes. The mind defends. True influence begins by reducing emotional friction. This is why skilled communicators focus first on emotional state, not arguments. They observe posture, breathing, and facial tension. They adjust their own body language to signal calm, openness, and respect. This adjustment invites alignment rather than demand compliance. Personal space also plays a role. Standing too close can feel invasive. Standing too far can feel disconnected. Skilled influencers read subtle shifts in distance and respond accordingly, maintaining comfort without intrusion. Social alignment extends beyond one-on-one interaction. In group settings, alignment determines leadership. People follow those whose presence feels grounded and attuned. Leaders who understand body language and emotional dynamics do not need to assert authority loudly. Their confidence is communicated through stillness, posture, and measured speech. Influence is often lost when emotional signals are ignored. A person may verbally agree while their body resists. They may nod while leaning away. These signals indicate compliance without commitment. Skilled observers recognize this and slow down, address concerns, or create space for honesty. Rapport also requires authenticity. Forced mirroring or artificial enthusiasm can be detected. The nervous system senses incongruence. True alignment arises from genuine attention and curiosity. Empathy sharpens influence. When people feel seen rather than evaluated, defenses drop. Empathy does not mean agreement. It means recognition. You can acknowledge emotion without surrendering boundaries. Influence without empathy becomes manipulation. Empathy without awareness becomes vulnerability. Mastery lies in balance. As you practice social alignment, you will notice that resistance softens when people feel understood. Conversations become collaborative rather combative. Influence feels less like effort and more like momentum. True power in human interaction is not domination. It is resonance. When your presence aligns with others, influence becomes natural, ethical, and lasting. If you're ready, next we can continue with Chapter 8, Detecting Deception and Hidden Motives, and move closer to Chapter 8, Seeing Clearly, Truth, Deception, and the Responsibility of Awareness. At some point in learning to read people, a quiet shift happens. You stop actively analyzing gestures. You stop mentally cataloging expressions. Instead, you begin to sense when something is off. This is not intuition in the mystical sense. It is pattern recognition refined through observation. Your brain has learned what alignment feels like, and it now detects misalignment instinctively. Deception is not a single behavior. There is no universal signal that proves a lie. Deception is a process, and that process creates strain. The strain shows up as inconsistency. When someone tells the truth, their words, tone, posture, facial expression, and timing tend to align naturally. When someone hides, alters, or avoids the truth, alignment breaks. The body works harder. The voice shifts. The rhythm changes. One of the clearest indicators of deception is cognitive load. Lying requires effort. The brain must suppress the truth, construct an alternative, remember what has already been said, and monitor the listener's reaction all at once. This mental overload often produces leaks, hesitations, verbal stumbles, unnecessary detail, sudden changes in posture, or increased self-soothing behaviors appear without conscious intent. Timing remains critical. Genuine reactions appear immediately. Fabricated ones arrive late. When surprise, concern, or agreement shows up a moment after it should, the delay suggests processing rather than reaction. The nervous system always responds faster than conscious storytelling. Avoidance is another key signal. People hiding something often avoid specific topics, redirect conversations, or answer indirectly. They may speak in generalities rather than specifics. They may repeat the question or respond with unrelated information. These behaviors reduce exposure and buy time. However, ethical reading requires restraint. Emotional discomfort does not equal deception. Fear, shame, trauma, and vulnerability can all create the same behavioral strain as lying. A person may tell the truth while feeling unsafe. This is why accuracy depends on empathy as much as observation. Hidden motives also reveal themselves through consistency. People reveal what they want not through what they say once, but through what they pursue repeatedly. Attention, control, validation, safety, or dominance all shape behavior over time. When words promise one thing and behavior consistently delivers another, behavior tells the truth. As your awareness deepens, your role shifts. You stop trying to expose people. You start protecting clarity. You recognize when trust is warranted and when boundaries are necessary. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing approval. You listen, observe, and respond deliberately. With this awareness comes responsibility. Reading people gives you influence, but influence must be guided by integrity. Awareness without ethics becomes manipulation. Ethics without awareness becomes vulnerability. Mastery lives in balance. The purpose of understanding human behavior is not control. It is connection. It is protection. It is leadership rooted in clarity rather than force. When you see people clearly, you communicate honestly. You set boundaries calmly. You choose relationships consciously. You will notice that people feel different around you. Calmer, more seen, less able to hide, but also less judged. Presence itself becomes influence. The greatest shift is internal. You stop doubting your perceptions. You trust what you observe without rushing to conclusions. You become comfortable with uncertainty while remaining grounded in reality. Human behavior is not a mystery. It follows emotional logic. Once you learn that logic, you stop being confused by mixed signals, hidden agendas, or unclear interactions. You do not become colder by seeing clearly. You become steadier. This is the science of reading people, not as a weapon, but as a lens that reveals truth, deepens empathy, and sharpens judgment without cruelty. When perception becomes clear, confusion fades. When awareness becomes steady, confidence follows. And when you truly understand people, you move through the world with quiet power, unshaken clarity, and calm control.